New at 6:30, 3 veterans with 3 different serious medical problems all were turned away or ignored by a local Veterans Administration clinic. Come 4 investigator Tracy Vetter explores why, after national outrage and promises of change, the VA is still letting down local vets.
We've got to use everything we've got at our disposal.
Veteran Bob Griffin is 100% disabled following his service in Vietnam.
When I left Vietnam, I left without a memory.
I was a zombie.
Olivia Lebance's 80% disability is connected to her 6 years in the Army.
It just started with some numbness and tingling down my left leg.
It burned really bad when I got it.
Marine Corps vet Kyle Davis hadn't seen a doctor since he left Afghanistan years ago, until a strange bug bite left him limping, nauseous, and lightheaded.
It would start oozing fluid, and it was, yeah, it got pretty disgusting.
All 3 received the new Veterans Choice Cards issued by the Veterans Administration with the promise of timely, efficient medical care. But when each went to the Mount Vernon VA clinic, care was either delayed or they were turned away.
I really did not expect to be treated like this.
When Davis called the number on his choice card explaining his emergency, they sent him to the Mount Vernon clinic 37 miles north of his home. Once there, they told him they aren't accepting new patients.
And she just kind of blew me off and looked at the guy next to her and said, well, what do we do about this guy? He goes, well, send him to Seattle just like all the rest of them.
Davis calls the 2-hour drive south to Seattle a nightmare.
I almost passed out and banged into the person in front of me a couple of times.
Griffin was already a registered Veterans Choice patient at Mount Vernon. He went in the end of June with a dangerously high heart rate, but says they sent him away because he didn't have an appointment.
They basically drew the line and said, be quiet, we're not listening to you. You're here, you're not supposed to be here. Please leave.
Lebance has been wheelchair bound since 2013. Last spring, her symptoms started getting worse.
My speech gets stuttered, thought gets stuttered.
A VA doctor gave orders for an MRI and a neurologist to be referred through the clinic in Mount Vernon. But her mother couldn't get anyone, either the VA or the Choice program, to approve the referral.
And they kept saying, it's the VA. No, it's Choice. It's VA. It's Choice.
Nearly 2 months later, Olivia continued to deteriorate with no appointments in sight.
You don't know what to do. You scream. It's like, ah! Where do you turn?
Her mother finally paid for an MRI at a private hospital. It showed no tumors, but a small anomaly in her brain. Davis got treated at the Seattle VA and was later diagnosed with MRSA. When Griffin left the Mount Vernon clinic, he immediately went to a private clinic and wound up spending 2 nights in the hospital with heart arrhythmia. We first called,
Hi, Tracy Vetter with Como TV.
And then visited the Mount Vernon VA clinic in person.
So you can't tell me what the practice is in terms of sending people to Seattle?
I can speak to the practice, that what we do, but Chad is going to be able to speak to you.
That's Chad Hudson with the VA Public Affairs Office. He refused to do an on-camera interview, but did tell us the Mount Vernon clinic is short 3 medical personnel, which is why they're turning people away. Additionally, veterans first have to register to use the Veterans Choice program. But when Davis tried calling the number to do that...
In this day and age, who has a busy signal? Wow.
And the VA could not tell us why the private third party that operates Veterans Choice was still sending people to Mount Vernon for care.
I'm pretty pissed off now. What's the point of even issuing this card out to a bunch of people that can't use it?
This has done nothing for the veterans.
They've let all of our veterans down.
The VA adds that the Veterans Choice program is still pretty new and there are going to be hiccups and bumps along the way. Back to you.
Tracy, solutions. Did the VA have any of those?
Well, the local VA did tell me that they fixed that busy signal problem, which we told you about. That's certainly a start, but one of the real problems seems to be there's a lot of misunderstanding about how this program is supposed to work, and there are no immediate plans for educating the veteran population.
All right, Tracy, thanks for looking into it.
And veterans nationwide are still struggling to get health care, according to a new report in a congressional hearing today.
The report outlined the same problems first revealed in August by an ongoing Como News investigation into the local VA. And investigator Tracy Vetter is here with more on the challenges that our local veterans face. Tracy?
You know, one of the biggest problems the report notes is the very different care that veterans receive at each VA health facility. That's no surprise to 15-year vet Kyle Wright, who told me that moving here meant putting his health, even his life, in danger.
In the morning, I use this on the back of my head.
Every day, Kyle Wright cleans, disinfects, and sterilizes a 4-inch scar on his scalp. He has a recurring case of MRSA, a 16-year-long staph infection that common antibiotics no longer touch. He got the initial infection long ago in basic training while getting his head shaved.
It never went away. It would heal up, come back, heal up, come back, heal up, and come back.
According to Wright and his medical records, which he shared with the Como investigators, he's undergone more than 20 rounds of increasingly aggressive antibiotics, even had 2 surgeries to try and remove the infection from his scalp. But the MRSA comes back 2 or 3 times every year.
And I can never get rid of this. I will always have this.
While in the Navy and later at the VA in Long Beach, Wright says his medical care was good. Then he moved to Marysville.
I moved up here to continue nursing school, and pretty much all hell broke loose.
First, at the Mount Vernon Clinic, where the Como investigators previously documented trouble with vets getting care due to serious understaffing. Wright needed to establish residency at that clinic, but at 2 out of his 3 appointments...
Oh, Mr. Wright, we're sorry. We don't have a provider here today.
Finally, during a MRSA outbreak, Wright says the Mount Vernon Clinic sent him to the Seattle VA emergency room, which was fine until his 3rd MRSA outbreak. In spite of 16 years of Navy and VA medical records noting the recurring MRSA, Wright says the ER doctor refused to prescribe antibiotics.
I needed to get on something right away because the MRSA was going all over the back of my head.
Before leaving the ER, Wright convinced them to culture his scalp. The next morning, the doctor called to tell him he had MRSA.
This is crap. I mean, I've never seen a VA like this.
Stories like Kyle's are the reason the House is holding hearings today.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
These problems were supposed to be fixed with last year's Veterans Choice Act.
Yeah, you're a good boy.
Instead, the nightmares for individual veterans continue. According to an independent report, the VA has severe problems that go bone deep, including, as Kyle Wright discovered moving from Long Beach to Puget Sound, extreme differences in care.
We found large variations in performance that resulted in too many unacceptable veteran experiences.
After reaching out to Senator Patty Murray, she sent a statement which reads, in part, reports of continued problems affecting veterans in Washington state are deeply troubling and, if true, absolutely unacceptable. She goes on to say, I will continue to push for answers at the highest levels of the VA to ensure our country is doing everything possible to fulfill its promise to care for our veterans. We also reached out several times to the local VA Health Administration. They have not responded. Eric, Harry?
It just seems like these problems aren't going away.
They aren't, and that's why this report is specifically calling for a really deep, systemic look at changing the system there.
Let's hope they can get it fixed, Tracy.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Patty Murray called for sweeping changes today to the VA, saying veterans should not have to continue fighting for health care.
Murray says veterans across the state have called her with the same complaints that we've revealed in our ongoing Como News investigation. Topping the list of complaints are delays in care, from surgeries and cancer treatments to mental health screenings.
Our veterans have already sacrificed so much. They should not have to come back and fight the VA to get the care that they have earned.
Murray says problems with the new Veterans Choice program mean that a complete overhaul is necessary to truly meet the needs of veterans. She's talking about veterans like Dorian Chamorro, who spent 4 years in the Marines, including a tour in Iraq, but says nothing compares to the frustration of trying to get medical treatment from the Puget Sound VA.
Chamorro can't work, says he's out of money and options, and in desperation turned to the Como investigators. Investigator Tracy Vetter has been digging into his case. Tracy?
You know, 4 months ago, Dorian Chamorro tore a shoulder muscle so badly he can't work. Since then, he says the VA has canceled appointments, delayed treatment, and left him broke and unable to support his family.
Valen, hon, you want to put him in his chair?
Dorian Chamorro does most things left-handed these days.
A little awkward, yeah.
Tough for a right-handed dad with a 2-year-old son. But he has no choice since tearing the labrum in his right shoulder in June.
I can move it to about here, but there's no overhead.
It's an injury he attributes to his years in the Marine Corps, carrying heavy weight as a mortarman, including a tour in Iraq. But his profession now, repairing and maintaining wind turbines, requires full arm strength.
Well, it's a dangerous career I'm in. If my arm gives out because it's not functioning right, someone could die.
Shortly after his injury, Chamorro went to the VA's American Lake Medical Center. He expected to quickly be sent to an orthopedic surgeon for a repair so he could get back to work.
And it hurts.
Instead, he says he's had 2 cortisone shots in 4 months and still has no treatment plan that will get him back to work anytime soon.
My injuries are nothing compared to other veterans. But it's still, so what? We should all get the service that we deserve.
After 3 months waiting for surgery at the VA, his short-term disability from work ran out in September.
That's how desperate we are.
Now his family is surviving on food stamps and a small VA disability check that doesn't cover the rent. His only option may be long-term disability until he can get a surgical repair.
Thanks, son. It doesn't matter if it's a war you agree with or not. If you're in the military, you go and do what you're told. And I did, and I'm glad I did it. But I shouldn't be getting pushed under the carpet or doctors acting like I'm making it up to get some sort of benefit.
I get angry every time I think about it. He deserves better than this. Our veterans deserve better than this.
Oh, is it a phone? Hi.
To add insult to injury, October 6th, someone broke into their home, stole 2 computers, expensive gaming systems, a flat-screen TV, and hundreds of DVDs out of their son's bedroom.
How dare they? Where do you get the gall to do that?
Chamorro turned to Como News believing we were his last resort to get action from the VA. It worked. After I contacted the Seattle VA, Chamorro says the head of surgery called to assure him that he'd be taken care of.
There's comes a point where there's nothing more I can do except for turn to help to you to get the word out there.
Well, the word is getting out. Today, Chamorro met with an orthopedic surgeon, and he is now scheduled for surgery. So he's got a timeline to get back on the job.
Tracy, these stories are so hard to watch, and I have to ask, does the VA respond to these stories you've been finding?
You know, I have repeatedly asked the VA to comment on what they're doing to fix the problems we've uncovered and have heard nothing back from them at all. Now, with Senator Murray demanding change in D.C., we hope that prompts some action locally.
So frustrating.
It is.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. Dorian's friends. Oh, if you have a story for Como investigators, first of all, they do want to hear from you. Call the number on your screen, 206-404-4444. And you can also email investigators@comotv.com. As I mentioned, Dorian's friends and Marine Brothers launched a GoFundMe site to help, but has only raised a fraction of the $10,000 the family needs to stay on its feet.
What is this?
Oh my God.
So the Como problem solvers stepped in to make up the difference, giving the family a check for $8,500. This fund exists for moments like these where we can help deserving people in need. You donate to our fund online. To donate, go to comonews.com. From the news menu, click on Problem Solvers.
It is a stunning number. Every single day in this country, 22 veterans commit suicide.
Como investigator Tracy Vetter discovered that despite of an overhaul, the National Veterans Crisis Line is still failing some veterans.
Investigator Tracy Vetter is here to tell us what she's uncovered. Tracy?
Well, you know, Eric and Mary, crisis line problems date back nearly 2 years, with issues like suicidal veterans being forwarded to voicemail. In spite of reassurances from the top, we found there are still problems, leaving a local veteran teetering on the brink, literally gun in hand.
There's one of me on perimeter. They shot this guy right afterwards.
Photographs spark Jim Cusimano's memories of his 2 tours in Vietnam.
That's what was left of our trench after a mortar attack.
Memories as sharp as yesterday.
Actually, these 3 girls got killed about 2 weeks after I took this photograph. So they just shot them in place in the statues and blew them up.
Vietnam left indelible marks on Jim's soul.
I only have one mode, and it's survive. And unfortunately, it can be scary at times. It will never happen again.
Jim, with his wife Barbara's help, has learned to navigate civilian life, avoiding triggers like busy malls and the smell of beer. But at 69, Jim's health has deteriorated. His PTSD is now exacerbated by the constant pain of a collapsed disc and pinched sciatic nerves in both legs.
I know what he's been going through. So much stress.
I just finally had cracked. After a year of putting up with pain, trying to get this hernia fixed.
That's okay. He describes the pain like a flame held under his hand with no let-up. Then, 2 months ago, Jim was home alone.
I finally got to the point where I just couldn't take any more of the pain. I just wanted to stop it, you know, any way I could.
Jim called friend and fellow vet Lance Axtell.
I was really concerned. I thought that he was, going to cause himself and others harm.
I was loading up a couple clips.
I told him to wait, just stop, relax. I'd, be over.
That's when fear morphed into frustration. You see, Axtell called the National Veterans Crisis Line for help.
You have reached the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
But when he followed the directions for veterans and pressed 1,
and the phone would go dead.
Axtell says he dialed the number again and again.
You have reached.
And again.
I called him up probably 5 times, and every time that I called him up, they would disconnect.
The Veterans Crisis Line was already under fire following an Inspector General's report that found some crisis callers were put on hold or directed to backup crisis centers and then sent to voicemail.
I am very frustrated that this continues to occur.
Senator Patty Murray has seen the OIG report and says she will go after the VA to get this fixed.
We have to continue to be aggressive. And that's what I'm doing and will continue to do, to make sure that the VA just doesn't tell me something in words but follows it up in actions.
In desperation, Axtell called the regional VA hospital and says he was transferred to a non-attended line that told him to leave a message.
That's unacceptable.
At Puget Sound Veterans Health, doctors David Ruskin and Greg Rieger agree. And they don't know why Axtell didn't get help.
Our process is set up so that every veteran who calls will speak to a qualified responder. The idea that a veteran could call and that not happen is unacceptable.
Rieger says every employee goes through what's called gatekeeper training so that even a clerk or maintenance worker who comes across a suicidal vet in crisis is supposed to stay with them in person or on the phone until a counselor is in touch.
So if there's anything going on in our system that loses veterans, that makes it hard for them, then we're not doing our job. And that means we've got to start doing our job better.
Axtell gave up on the VA and rushed to Jim's house.
He could tell I was in real bad trouble.
Me and his son removed a firearm from him.
Then he picked the gun up, went upstairs and put it somewhere.
The police arrived and took Jim to Evergreen Hospital and contacted Barbara, who'd been out with their daughter.
It was difficult to see my husband being tied down. I mean, they literally had him locked with a key, and he started crying.
Another harsh memory for the Cusimanos.
Oh, I still got goosebumps.
Today, Jim's hernia has been surgically repaired. His outlook on life is much brighter. He has no kind words for the VA, but a message for other vets in crisis.
Stop, think about your family. Hang on, it will go away. It will get a little bit better.
As for the VA, the Puget Sound VA mental health doctors stress that in spite of any problems with the national line or even locally, they still encourage veterans to continue calling if they need help, and they promise to keep working to improve their systems. And of course, we'll be watching.
2 people in your piece used the word unacceptable. That's
Both
what it
sides.
is.
It is unacceptable.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
A local veteran is wasting away from a disease that will eventually kill him.
It's a condition the Veterans Administration now presumes is connected to his military service. So why is the VA refusing to help him and his family?
Como investigator Tracy Vetter is here with a new case, and it highlights failures by the VA, Tracy.
Well, you know, the most stunning thing about Spike George's case, the VA has already admitted that the drinking water at Marine Base Camp Lejeune, where he served, was contaminated and linked to several diseases. But despite that, the VA has twice denied benefits for George, and now he is running out of time.
Walking is a laborious and painstaking exercise for Spike George. Talking, also sometimes difficult. Even breathing can be a struggle. Doctors' reports state George has diffuse systemic scleroderma, which means his immune system attacks his body both inside and out, causing his skin to thicken and tighten, scarring his lungs, keeping his entire GI tract from working correctly.
107.5 was the lowest. Today, I'm waiting at 109.6.
He's lost so much body fat, his stomach can't process nutrition.
This happened about 2 weeks ago.
What's happening there with your hands?
I can't lift it up like I used to.
George's military records verify he was in the Marine Corps from 1984 to 88, with the vast majority of his enlistment spent living and working at Camp Lejeune. All the red squares on this Toxic Substances Agency map are federal cleanup sites. The blue circles are water wells. Federal reports now confirm that from 1953 to 87, the drinking water at the North Carolina base was contaminated with trichloroethylene, tetrachloroethylene, and other contaminants known to cause cancer and other serious diseases, including scleroderma. George spent the past 20-plus years as a King County corrections officer, wanting to provide for his wife, Faye, and their 7-year-old daughter, Anne Marie. He kept working through the pain and the debility.
I told the weapons instructor, I was like, I can't pull the trigger anymore. It's my disease that's taken over my body.
George also kept losing weight, becoming even weaker, until finally this past January, he was forced to admit he couldn't do the job.
All skin and bone.
Knowing his disease was progressive, George began applying to the VA for disability and health benefits 3 years ago. That was after President Obama signed a new bill in 2012 authorizing health benefits for all veterans who served at Camp Lejeune when the water was contaminated and had one of 15 diseases, including scleroderma. But records show the VA twice denied disability benefits for George, saying there was no evidence it was service-connected.
No one deserves the treatment that he's got.
Chris Brown and other King County colleagues have helped the George family, including filing a second appeal to the VA. The VA also denied George health benefits, saying that since he was working, he made too much money to qualify. By that time, the family had paid thousands out of pocket for numerous surgeries and treatment.
But when it happened, it just totally devastating. I'm like, what am I going to do?
Now George can't work. His county benefits are running out. Faye works 12-plus hours a day to keep her new restaurant and the family afloat, though she'd rather spend the time with her husband.
We don't know how long he's going to live.
The day after our interview, George was back in the hospital, in ICU, and underwent 2 emergency surgeries.
I feel personally they're waiting for him to die and other veterans to die before they step up, it's saving money. That's all it's doing for them.
In December, the Secretary of the VA announced he's changing the regulations so Camp Lejeune vets who get sick will automatically qualify for disability benefits. When we asked the VA specifically about Spike George's case, they said he would likely be covered. But there's a problem. The feds won't pay any disability until it finalizes its own rules.
So any idea when that might happen?
Well, that's the additional bad news about this. The VA says it's likely going to take at least a year for those rules to be finalized. That could well be too late for Spike George.
Gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
And infuriating.
You bet.
Thanks, Tracy. New at 6:30, the Como investigators are getting results for a local veteran who is desperately ill. Spike George developed a terminal illness after drinking contaminated water at a Marine base. Como's Tracy Vetter, who shared George's story with us last week, is here with an update. Tracy?
Well, Spike George is in the hospital following 2 emergency surgeries. But after we contacted the Veterans Administration and Senator Patty Murray's office, he's resting easier, knowing at least the bill for this month-long hospital stay will be covered.
Is there anything else I can do for you while I'm in here?
Spike George is in the last stages of systemic scleroderma, a disease that attacks the body from the inside out, hardening his skin and his internal organs. Today, he weighs just 107 pounds, but feels better than when we first interviewed him more than a month ago.
Last time you saw me, my right lung was collapsed, and I couldn't barely talk.
George was a Marine at Camp Lejeune from 1984 to 1988, during the 30-year period when the water there was contaminated with toxins known to cause cancer and other serious illnesses, including scleroderma. In 2012, Congress and the President approved automatic health care coverage for Camp Lejeune Marines with those diseases. But last year, the VA denied George's health care benefits, saying as a King County corrections officer, he made too much money. Now he can't work at all. Right after our first interview, George was admitted to Swedish Medical Center for 2 emergency surgeries. But the insurance from his 20-plus year career ran out. Finally, last Friday, following Como's calls to the VA, we learned the Veterans Administration would pay all of George's health care costs from June 14th forward.
It was good news until today.
Last week, good news. This week, bad. A social worker brought a new denial from the VA.
She said that they will not authorize me going to a nursing care facility. I'm like, really?
The Como investigators again started making calls and sending emails. It turns out because George is not considered disabled by the VA, he can get health care, but not long-term nursing home care, which is where he needs to go next. This afternoon, the Puget Sound Veterans Health Administration told me it is working on a short-term plan to move him temporarily to either a nursing home or the VA hospital, and promised it would not leave Spike George with nowhere to go.
Oh, it's a big relief. Really big relief.
Now, this is only a short-term plan for the next month or so. George still needs the VA to find a long-term facility for him and hopes it approves his second appeal asking for disability. Tracy Vetter, Como investigators.
Tracy, thank you. If you have a story for the Como investigators, we want to hear from you. Call the number on your screen, 206-404-4444. You can also email investigators@comotv.com.